It has been over 11 years since the first Dead Island game was released, and now the long-awaited Dead Island 2 is due to be released in April. Before we play Dead Island 2, I wanted to have a look back over the story of Dead Island and the franchise so far. There have been 6 games in the Dead Island franchise, though Dead Island Epidemic and Dead Island Survivors are no longer available. I will not be covering the novelisation, which has some differences from the main game, nor will I be covering the unfinished Dark Horse comic. I'll be going through the events of the series in chronological order. So join me for an island-hopping adventure you'll never forget, as we explore the story of Dead Island so far. Decades prior to the outbreaks on the Benoi archipelago, Ronald Emery started GeoPharm, a pharmaceutical company dedicated to finding cures for diseases including Kuru. While the company was originally based in San Francisco, media attention drew Ronald to build a series of laboratories on the islands of the Benoi archipelago, including on the island of Benoi and Narapella, 2 islands that are only a few miles apart. Ronald recruited Chase Barrister, a young postdoc from Shanwick University, to assist him in his research and establishing the labs. Chase's research resulted in the Hewitt-Kahn Enzyme Accelerator, or HKEA, which is believed to be a potential cure for the Kuru virus. Initially, experiments were conducted on Kuru-infected anemones, but after Ronald's son Emery seizes control of the company in the name of the Palm Garden Order, the extent of the experimentation grew and continued with the use of human subjects, including the native people of the nearby Benoi Island. Some of the natives were kept on Narapella for further experimentation, while others were returned to Benoi under supervision. After Emery seized control, he killed Chase Barrister and had experiments conducted on Chase's wife, which left her disfigured. These actions caused their young son Kevin to swear vengeance on the Palm Garden Order and would eventually lead him to join the consortium. On the 18th of July 2006, 2 weeks prior to the Benoi outbreak, Benoi Island Defense Force Colonel Ryder White is being interviewed and is asked if he is willing to kill civilians, fellow soldiers, children, and his own wife. Ryder answers affirmatively for each of these, though when questioned about his wife, he hesitated before saying yes. There are 2 people observing the interview who comment on this hesitation and whether Ryder would push the button. The man indicates that Ryder's wife is the best chance of slowing him down. Conveniently, Ryder's wife Emily was employed as the chief medical officer at the Benoi High Security Prison about 6 months prior to the Benoi outbreak. She convinced Ryder to move to Benoi with her, and he took up a position training the Benoi Island Defense Force. 2 days prior to the Benoi outbreak, an operative Kilo 2 is infiltrating a GeoPharm lab on the island of Narapella. Kilo 2's mission is to eliminate a mole who is working with the international terrorist and hacker Caron, aka Kevin Barrister. Entering the lab, Kilo 2 realizes that there has been an incident and the virus the lab was working on has escaped containment, infecting those working in the facility. Kilo 2 is able to make his way through the lab, speaking on the radio with his contact, Xian Mei, who is on the island of Benoi. Kilo 2 finds the mole and kills him, before speaking with Caron over the radio. Kilo 2 then goes to leave the lab with the data he recovered, but realizes that the virus has escaped the facility and the island has been overwhelmed. Believing he will not be able to escape, and realizing that he is being followed by something big, Kilo 2 stashes the data, telling Xian that it will be there to be retrieved. Kilo 2 is then attacked by that something big, and presumably dies off-screen. During the start of the outbreak on Benoi, rapper Sam B is performing for guests of the Royal Palms Hotel. While the party goes on outside, investigative journalist Roger Hewitt slips away into the hotel. He is chasing a story about the illegal exploitation of Benoit's natural resources and was given a tip that afternoon that the hotel manager, Kenneth Billard, was involved in the illegal activity, including a money laundering operation. Roger had bribed a maid to leave the door to the manager's office unlocked, and he is able to go through Kenneth's files. But instead of finding the evidence he was looking for, he found a file on 4 people connected to the hotel. Roger is confused as these people would not be involved in the logging operation, so he wonders what makes them so special. The files are on Perna Jackson, a former police officer turned high-end bodyguard, Logan Carter, a disgraced former NFL player, the rapper Sam B, and Xian Mei, an undercover police officer working at the hotel as a clerk. As Roger muses over the files, thinking that it makes no sense for them to be here, he hears someone at the door. Thinking that he is busted, he opens the door saying that he was just looking for the bathroom. But upon opening the door, he finds a zombie in front of him. Back at the party, the 4 people about whom the files were written are all present during the initial outbreak, but they all manage to make it back to their hotel rooms, waking up the next morning in the midst of a zombie apocalypse. One of the survivors makes their way through the hotel, taking in the devastation that has occurred and finding the parents from the Dead Island trailer still in their room, though not reanimated. This survivor is contacted by a voice coming over the hotel speaker, who gives them directions. The survivor escapes a group of zombies before being knocked unconscious. They awaken again, this time in a beach hut with a group of survivors. They are told they were rescued by a lifeguard, John Sinnamoy, who is currently fending off zombies outside the hut. They head out to help Sinnamoy, and after the zombies are eliminated, Sinnamoy is contacted over the radio by someone who claims to have a way off the island, if the group can get to him. Sinnamoy asks where the voice is, but the signal is cut off. Sinnamoy then tells the survivor that the voice told him the survivor was in trouble at the hotel, and was immune to the virus. Sinnamoy didn't believe it at the time, but given the bite marks, he believes it now. Sinnamoy says they will need to move everyone to the lifeguard tower, as there is more equipment there and a stronger radio with an antenna. The immune survivors are tasked with getting the keycard for the lifeguard tower from Sinnamoy's bungalow, and then with clearing the lifeguard tower of the infected. With these tasks complete, Sinnamoy and the other survivors from the hut make the trip to the lifeguard tower. With the virus spreading, Colonel Ryder White is tasked with containing the outbreak. He orders the evacuation centre operated by the Benoi Island Defence Force to close, and for the soldiers there to kill all of the people who had been exposed to the disease. Major Dixon was running the evacuation point, and is now in charge of ensuring the infected are eliminated. He is also using the facility as a proving ground for his men. Along with the closure of the evacuation point, Ryder also orders bridges across the island to be blown in order to hinder movement of civilians to slow the spread of the disease. Ryder is in one of these helicopters targeting the bridges, but one of the other men in the helicopter is infected and turns, attacking the pilot after they hit their first target. The helicopter crashes in the Queenscliff neighbourhood of Moresby, with White being the only survivor. He is able to contact the base and asks to be picked up by Unit 4 on their way back from blowing the Old Town Bridge. Unfortunately, Ryder is informed that base has lost contact with Unit 4 while they are on the way to the bridge, meaning it has not yet been blown. Ryder decides to meet up with Unit 4 to help them accomplish their mission. He battles his way through the undead and is contacted by his wife Emily, who tells them the prison is in the midst of a riot, as they have lost control of the undead. There is a rescue helicopter heading to the prison, and Ryder tells Emily he expects her to be the first on the helicopter. Not long after speaking with Emily, White finds the remains of Unit 4, who have been wiped out by a local gang, who have also taken the explosive intended for the bridge. On his way to the gang's base, White is given an update by Emily, who has been saved by a prisoner named Kevin, and they are now barricaded in an area cut off from the rest of the prison. White makes it to the gang's base and is able to recover the explosives. He then heads for the bridge via the sewers, which have been completely overrun with the undead. The Old Town Bridge is held by more gang members, who Ryder eliminates before blowing the bridge. He reports his success to base, and they direct him to a gas station in Zone 6, where they will evacuate him from the roof. Ryder makes it to the gas station and holds off the dead until the helicopter arrives. On the helicopter, Base advises Ryder that despite his efforts, the virus has now spread across the island, and it is time he evacuate and order Executive Protocol 66, the nuclear extermination of the island. Ryder says he won't order the bombing until he knows his wife is safe. He radios Emily, and she tells him that she has been bitten and has told the rescue helicopter not to come. Emily's recordings indicate that while she was sure she had locked the door behind her and Kevin, one of the infected got in and bit her before Kevin was able to kill it. It is likely Kevin intentionally let the infected in order to later gain control of Ryder. Ryder orders the helicopter he is on to turn around and to head to the prison. Back at the lifeguard tower, the group is tasked with helping Dominic by obtaining a signal amplifier and helping Mike by obtaining fuel to enable them to cremate the bodies. With these tasks complete, Sinnamoy tells the group that he has gotten the radio going and is attempting to contact the voice, but hasn't been able to get through yet. He is going to continue his attempts, but in the meantime asks the group if they can find some food for the survivors. The immune find what they can, and while Sinnamoy is grateful for the group's help, he realizes that they will need some more supplies, and so he tells the group they will need to head into the city of Moresby to look for more. This will require driving through a tunnel that has been blocked and filled with the infected, but Cinnamon knows that there is a truck in the Royal Palms garage that will be able to make it through. He sends the group to the hotel to retrieve this truck. The hotel remains as overrun as the rest of the island, but shortly after entering, they are contacted by a security guard over the intercom, who directs them to the elevator. They meet up with the security guard, who tells them they won't be able to go any further, as the security system has locked down the hotel. However, the guard will help the group get to the parking garage if they help him first by finding his partner Ken, who was attacked by a mob of zombies. Ken is not in a good way, and after the group gives him some morphine, he dies from his injuries. Making it to the security room, the guard tells the group that parts of the security system are down and will need to be reset before the group will be able to access the garage. The server room is full of infected, and the group has to fight their way through in order to reset the system. Having done so, the group is now able to get into the garage and retrieve the truck. Taking the truck back to the lifeguard tower, Cinnamon tells the group that a helicopter has crashed nearby, and he asks them to check the crash site for survivors and supplies. The only survivor of the crash is a man named Nikolai, who asks the group to help him get to a nearby bunker. Once they have done so, they return to Cinnamon, who sends them out again, this time to take their truck to be upgraded, so that it can better make the trip to the city. Fortunately, there is a mechanic nearby, who has been able to survive so far. Unfortunately, he has been bitten, but he will live long enough to outfit the vehicle, provided the group is able to hold back the dead long enough for him to complete his work. With the truck upgraded, the mechanic asks the group to take his daughter Jin with them, knowing that he only has a few hours left before he turns. After the group agrees to take Jin with them, Cinnamon contacts them again over the radio and tells them it's time to head into the city, urging them not to take any stupid chances. The group, along with Jin, make the trip to the city, which they find to be in an even worse state than the resort. As they arrive, they hear church bells and find a church filled with survivors under siege by the dead. The group eliminates these zombies and enters the church. Speaking with Mother Helen, they are told one of the congregation has been possessed by a demon and locked himself in the belfry. Mother Helen asks the group to enter the belfry and put a stop to the bells which are drawing the dead. The group is able to easily put down the parishioner and switch off the bells. Having done so, they return to Mother Helen, who explains that the city has already been looted, and while she is able to help the group find supplies, she will only do so if they help her first. The church group is having issues with their water supply, and the two people who went to check on the pump station that morning have not returned. Mother Helen asks the group to check on the pump station to see what happened to the missing people, and to turn the water back on. Heading to the pump station, it has been overtaken by a local gang, who shoot at the group on sight. After fighting their way through the gang, the group find the missing people, who are able to get the water supply going, but there are 5 open fire hydrants which are causing significant water loss. The group has to go around and manually close the fire hydrants to prevent this water loss, before heading back to the church. There, Mother Helen is finally ready to assist them with finding supplies. She tells them that the wealthy destroyed the bridge leading to their part of town, not knowing it was actually the work of Ryder White. Fortunately, there is still a way into the wealthy district through the sewer, and one of the church survivors, Joseph, is willing to show the group the way. The group follows Joseph to the sewer maintenance building, and he directs them on how to close the valves and open the floodgates to expel the water from the sewer system. The group is then able to make their way through the sewers until they reach the town hall, where they are greeted by a police officer who is glad to see more survivors. The mayor, however, is less glad to see them, questioning them on how they are able to get into the building before telling them that there isn't any more food or medicine to spare. Walking away from the mayor, the group argues amongst themselves about what to do, with Logan saying they should just find the voice on the radio and get themselves out. With the decision made, the group contacts Jin, who is driving their armoured truck, and they tell her they weren't able to get more supplies and that they are calling it off. Jin is deeply upset about this and says they are meant to help people as they are the only ones who can. Perna attempts to convince Jin that the only way to help anyone is to find the voice on the radio, but Jin insists that they promise to get food and medicine, and she will do it on her own if the others won't help, and she will take the truck with her. Jin wants to supply everyone, the resort, the church, and the police station. The group agrees to supply everyone but the police station, which has been taken over by a local gang, and Perna tells Jin that after the supply run is done, they are tracking down the voice on the radio. Another town hall survivor, who overheard the group talking to the mayor, tells them about a supermarket nearby where they should be able to find supplies. And so, after bribing the policeman guarding the entrance to the sewer, the group makes their way to the supermarket, finding it has also been overtaken by a gang who they need to eliminate in order to secure the supplies. After the group recovers the supplies, they take it to the Old Town Bridge, lowering the crates down to Jin and Joseph to load into the truck. The group then make their way back to Town Hall, but it is immediately apparent that something has gone terribly wrong. The Town Hall survivors have been wiped out, and the building is full of the infected. With nothing they can do, the group heads back to the church, where Mother Helen tells them that Jin has gone to the police station to supply food to the gang there, taking Joseph with her. Mother Helen fears for their safety and asks the group to bring them back. The group only makes it to the steps of the church before finding Joseph, who is severely injured and who has been so overcome by his running with the police station thugs that all the colour has drained out of him. He tells the group that the gang beat him up until he blacked out, and they still have Jin. The group goes to the police station through the sewers, and they find their truck in the parking garage. Making their way into the police station, they find a surviving officer locked in a cell, who explains that the gang took the station when most of the police officers had been out trying to maintain order. The group is able to eliminate the gang in the station and find Jin, who has been traumatized by her experience. Sam B is enraged that Jin lied to them and could have gotten them killed. He wants to leave her with Mother Helen, but the others don't agree, and convince him that they should take her with them and get her off the island. The group stops in at the church before finally heading back to the lifeguard tower to take supplies to Cinemoy and the lifeguard tower survivors. Cinemoy does not have good news for the group. The radio signal was too weak, and while Dominic and a few others went to the hotel to try using the antenna there, they have not heard from them since. The group heads back to the hotel and finds Dominic there with the radio. They are able to make contact with a voice, who tells them that he is on the island prison, and falsely introduces himself as Colonel Ryder White. The voice claims that he went to the prison to get his wife, a doctor who was infected. He also claims he is able to call in a helicopter to evacuate them all if the group gets to him at the prison. He tells the group that there are mines in the water around the prison, and they will need to track down a smuggler named Moen, who will be able to guide them through the mines. Moen is in the jungle, and the voice tells the group that they will be able to reach the jungle via bunkers left by the Japanese. The group heads off to find one of these bunkers and has to blow the door to get in. Once inside, they are able to use the tunnels to get to the jungle without any issues. As they arrive in the jungle, they are contacted by the voice again, who suggests that Moen will want to be taken to the geofarm lab in the jungle. The group confront him on this and suggest that there is another reason he wants them to go to the lab. The voice tells them he hopes that the scientists will be able to create a cure for his wife from their blood, since they are immune to the virus. Jin tells the group that she knows someone that will be able to help them find Moen, and the group heads off to find this person. As the group heads into the jungle, the real Ryder White is making his way through the prison. Upon reaching the prison after being extracted from Moresby, Ryder had found his way through the prison to the hospital wing and found his wife Emily, who is still alive but clearly infected. He is radioed by Kevin, who says he will wait for him in the transformer room and tells him they need to get the power back on. Ryder makes it to Kevin, who he recognizes as the terrorist, Karen. Karen tells Ryder that he can help his wife if Ryder helps him, and he sends Ryder to the basement to turn the generators on to get the power working. Ryder gets the generators going and makes his way back up from the basement, being directed by Karen to head to medical storage to pick up some tetracycline to slow Emily's infection, then administers the tetracycline to Emily. Back on the mainland, the group makes it to the village and speaks with the man in charge, Matatero, who knows where Moen is, and will tell the group if they first recover weapons that had been stolen by a rival group led by Afran. The group makes a harrowing trip through the jungle, coming across the most deadly special infected, the Butcher, before reaching Afran's men. Taking down Afran's men, along with a number of infected, the group is able to recover the weapons and return them to Matatero. Matatero then says that in order to reach Moen, they will need a boat. Conveniently, Afran has a boat, and all the group need to do is fight their way through his camp and eliminate Afran himself to be able to take it. The group then travels by boat to Moen, who claims not to know the way to the prison, but does know how to get to the lab, which Moen says he knows is the source of the outbreak. The group heads to the lab along the river, finding the path up to the lab strewn with bodies and zombies wearing geofarm uniforms. Reaching the lab, they find that there are some survivors remaining, and they are directed to speak with the man in charge, Dr. West. Dr. West preemptively tells the group that the reason for this isolated lab in the middle of the jungle was because they were testing cosmetics on animals and were concerned about animal rights activists. However, the cages in the lab are not exactly animal-shaped. Dr. West has been examining blood samples from infected natives, but the virus mutates too quickly to identify. He wants to take samples from each of the immune to examine their blood, and the group agrees. It will take a few hours to examine the samples, and West asks if the group can help others in the lab in the meantime. The group obliges by helping one scientist, Frank, who has been trapped in a room by the infected, and by obtaining and replacing a fuse for the generator. Once these tasks are complete, the group checks in with Dr. West, who tells them they each have the O-negative blood type, which could be a coincidence, but for some reason the virus doesn't affect their T cells the way it does other people. Within the immune, the virus does not mutate or duplicate, it just dies. Dr. West explains that the virus appears to be a mutated form of Kuru, a prion disease endemic to the region, caused by consuming the brain as part of funerary practices among the indigenous people. Sick natives were brought to the lab by their healthy relatives, and Dr. West wonders if the natives who did not contract the virus have antibodies in their blood. Dr. West asks the group to go to the native camp and ask for a blood sample. The group obliges and finds the native leader, Karatoa Ope, and one warrior in a cave. Ope tells the group that they need to prove themselves against the greatest warriors of his tribe. The group enters the tribe's arena, and the warriors they are fighting are all zombies, including the greatest warrior of the tribe, from whom the group is permitted to take a blood sample. Based on the doctor's comments about wanting to find out if the healthy natives had antibodies, it did not seem like the doctor wanted a sample from the infected, which they would have had from the infected that were brought to the lab, but apparently this is fine, and the group is asked to help out more around the lab. The group obliges once more, this time obtaining more chemicals for one scientist, and obtaining infected muscle samples for another, before returning to Dr. West. Dr. West needs a stable sample of Kuru from a member of Ope's tribe who has not had contact with any of the infected. After agreeing to try to find such a sample, the group is contacted by the voice and told that the tribe embalms their dead, so they would be able to obtain a sample from any of the tribe's dead. The group goes to speak with Ope, who tells them that every member of his tribe ate the flesh of the immortals, but many did not resurrect. He thinks this means that the spirits are angry with them. Ope tells the group that the only warriors remaining are in the tomb of their ancestors. He offers to take the group to the tomb, which is near his village. The group escort Ope to the boat and travel along the river near to Ope's village. They then escort him through the village, which is overrun by the zombified members of his tribe, and up through the mountains to the tombs. Upon entering the tomb, the group and Ope come across a young woman, Yerima, Ope's daughter, lying on the ground. Ope says she is a very bad spirit and attempts to kill her. He is stopped by Perna, who shoots him dead. The group check on Yerima and ask if she ate any of the zombies, or immortals as Ope called them. She confirmed that she had to, that all of the members of her tribe were made to eat them, believing that if they did, they would live forever. The group resolved to take Yerima with them, and after obtaining the sample from one of the mummies there, they head back to the boat with Yerima. They go through the village where they find Moen surrounded by the dead, and after they rescue him, they head back along the river to the lab. At the lab, Dr. West says the sample may work, and he also wants to run some tests on Yerima to see if she is infected, but this will take some time. The voice from the prison contacts them again, becoming more impatient, and insisting that Moen does know the way to the prison, despite his claims not to. Returning to the boat, Moen confirms that he does actually know how to get to the prison, and that it is dangerous, so he doesn't like to go, but since the group saved his life, he is willing to take them. However, before they're able to go to the prison, they will need to obtain some more fuel for the boat, and also to pick up something for one of the prisoners, Titus, so he will let them through. The group heads into Moresby to obtain fuel from the petrol station, and to pick up Moen's stash from a shipping container. Once this is done, Moen says that due to the choppy water conditions, they will also need to make some modifications to the boat to prevent them from accidentally hitting one of the mines surrounding the prison. He directs the group to return to the workshop at the beach that had been run by Jin's father. The group complies and they obtain some metal rods, but when they bring them back to the boat, Jin says there's something she needs to do and tells them to wait for her. Jin heads into her father's workshop and finds that he is still there, but has succumbed to the infection. She puts him down and returns to the others. At the prison, Ryder heads to the central control room where Charon, aka the Voice, is talking to Dr. West via video link. Dr. West is reporting that he has successfully created a supervirus from Yerima's blood, just like Charon requested. Dr. West tells Charon that Yerima's blood contained the virus in a pristine form, and he believes she is the source of the plague. Dr. West doesn't know where the virus came from, but he tells Charon that he wishes to study it, to try to create a vaccine. Charon immediately tells him no, and directs him to send the virus to him, along with the immune survivors and Yerima. Dr. West tells him that he can have the virus, but Yerima is staying with him. Yerima then refuses to allow West to take more of her blood and locks herself in a cage. West goes to open the cage using his computer, and Karen takes this opportunity to open the cages holding the infected, killing West and the other scientists. Pretending to be Colonel White once more, Karen directs the immune survivors to return to the lab immediately. Back on the mainland, the group receives Karen's message about the labs, still believing the voice they're hearing is Colonel White's. At the prison, Ryder overheard at least the end of this conversation and interrogates Karen on who he was talking to. Karen tells Ryder not to be paranoid and says he can still help him. Karen then directs Ryder to wipe out the infected in cell block C and the showers to ensure the path is clear for the immune survivors. Ryder does so, wiping out the guards and zombies from cell block C and the shower block, before using the utility tunnels to return to the control room. Meanwhile, the group has returned to the lab and found all the scientists have been killed. They free Yerima from the cage, and she tells them that Dr. West had wanted to take more and more blood from her, but she knew a person could only lose so much blood, so she locked herself in a cage to get away from him. Yerima, not knowing of Karen's involvement, believed it was Dr. West who accidentally unlocked the cages holding the infected while trying to open her cage. Karen radios the group, saying that Dr. West had said he knew how to make the vaccine, and asks them to look for it. They find a syringe they believe to be the antidote and head to the prison, navigating the minefield while Karen tells them not to trust the prisoners. After clearing cell block C in the showers, Ryder is making his way back to the control room when he overhears this conversation between the immune and Karen. He confronts Karen, who claims he was pretending to be Ryder so the immune would trust him. He tells Ryder the immune are bringing an antidote for the virus. Karen then directs Ryder to set up a gas trap for the immune at the elevator. Ryder obtains the knockout gas and sets the trap. At the prison, Moen speaks with the leader of the prisoners, Titus, giving him the cigars he had stashed for him. Titus tells Moen that what he really needs are guns, and Moen tells Titus that they have something better than guns. They have people immune to the virus. Moen thinks maybe Titus and the immune can help each other out. Titus agrees to this and asks the group to release a prisoner who is still locked in his cell in cell block A, solitary. The group heads off to recover this prisoner, cutting down numerous zombie prisoners on the way. They find the prisoner in a cell full of bunk beds, which I guess is this prison's definition of solitary. They free the prisoner from his cell and escort him back to Titus. Titus is now willing to help the immune get to cell block C, provided they get the prisoners some weapons from the armory. When they get to the armory, they find Karen, who introduces himself as Kevin, and claims to be sent by Titus to help them get into the armory. Karen says they need a master key card to get into the armory, and only senior guards have these keys. The immune are able to find a master key card and return to Karen, who opens the door for them. The immune then take what's left in the armory and return to Titus. Titus is disappointed with the amount of weaponry the immune were able to recover, but the more pressing concern for now is food, as the kitchen has been overrun with the infected, and the prisoners are getting hungry. The group exterminates the infected in the kitchen and returns to Titus once more, who has decided it's now time to deal with the weapon shortage, and tells the group to head to cell block B, where the guards should have more weapons. The group does go to cell block B, however while they are there they are contacted by Karen, who, still pretending to be Colonel White, urges them not to get weapons for the prisoners, and telling them instead to come straight to him via the sewers. Karen says that he will take care of Jin, Moen and Yerima. Without any hesitation, the group abandons their quest to obtain weapons, and instead heads for the sewers, emerging into the shower room that had previously been cleared by Ryder. Making their way towards Karen, the group runs into Jin and Yerima, who explains that a mob of prisoners had attacked Titus and his men. The dead were joined by the noise, and Moen got the girls out of there, getting them into the vents before the dead attacked him and tore him apart. The group, along with Yerima and Jin, head to the elevators, where they fall victim to the trap set by Ryder. Ryder and Karen watch the group via CCTV as they lose consciousness. Karen says they can now get the cure, but Ryder pulls a gun on him, locking him in the control center before going to get the cure off the immune. Karen tells him the cure won't work, as Emily is no longer in the first stage of infection. Ryder heads off to try to save Emily, and once he is gone, Karen uses a key card to let himself out of the control center. Ryder goes to the elevator and takes the syringe off the immune, taking it to Emily in the hospital ward. Unfortunately, Emily has succumbed to the infection. Ryder tells Emily they can't give up, and suggests that maybe an antidote can be made from the vaccine. He takes Emily to the helicopter in the hope of evacuating her and finding scientists who are able to cure the virus. As Ryder is taking Emily to the roof, the group is waking up to Karen telling them that Ryder has taken the vaccine and gone to the helicopter. He tells them that Ryder is going to order the thermonuclear bombing of the island and that they need to hurry. Karen explains that Ryder is going to go the long way to the roof as he will be collecting his wife from the hospital ward, and suggests that the Immune should take the elevator to the roof. It will be dangerous, so he, Yerma and Jin will go the longer way and meet the Immune at the helicopter. The group splits up and the Immune make their way to the roof, finding themselves greeted on the roof by members of the Benoi Island Defense Force, determined not to let them reach the helicopter. As the Immune fight their way to the helicopter, Ryder contacts the base and orders Protocol 66 be executed. This is the signal for the Benoi Island Defense Force to bomb the island to eliminate the virus. The Immune finally fight their way past the soldiers and a number of infected to meet Ryder at the helicopter. Karen, Yerma and Jin arrive at the same time, and there is a tense standoff between the group and Ryder. Logan attempts to reason with Ryder, telling him his wife is gone, but he can still save them. Ryder says that the doctors in Sydney will be able to make more vaccine, and he will send helicopters to save everyone. Perna tells Ryder that Karen had told them about the nuclear bomb. Ryder says he had no choice, and the virus threatens the entire world. Benoi is lost either way. Jin comments to Ryder on how easy it must be to kill faceless nobodies, but it's harder to kill someone you love. Jin releases the zombified Emily, who immediately bites Ryder. He puts her down and shoots Jin twice in retaliation, killing her and sending her flying off the roof. Ryder, still believing the syringe she has contains a vaccine effective in the early stages of infection, injects himself. However, as this was actually the supervirus ordered by Karen, it causes Ryder to immediately transform into a mutated zombie, who the Immune have to put down. They do so, and the Immune, along with Yerma and Karen, who they still believe is just some guy named Kevin, are able to leave the island in the helicopter before the island is bombed. The Immune survivors from Benoi, along with Karen and Yerma, land on the Australian Navy vessel the HMAS Avenger. As the group gets off the helicopter, they are taken into custody by command of Lieutenant Colonel Samuel Hardy, who is quickly joined by Frank Serpo. Like Karen, Serpo is a member of the consortium. He was in charge of overseeing the Palanai experiment. Serpo orders the Immune to the lab, and for Yerma and Karen to go with him. The group struggle against their captors, and Yerma bites the man holding her before she is recaptured by the geopharm scientist accompanying Serpo. Hardy tries to intervene in Serpo's treatment of the group, but is told that his orders are to follow Serpo's orders. Hardy backs down and indicates to his men to follow Serpo's instructions. The Immune are examined by the geopharm scientist, while Yerma is removed to a separate facility. Karen is also taken off the ship to be moved to another consortium facility for debriefing, as it is suspected his goals are not really aligned with the consortium. After the Immune are tested, they are moved to a cell where they awaken to see John Morgan in the room with them. During the events of Dead Island, a similar outbreak is occurring on the island of Palanai, another island within the Benoi archipelago. John Morgan is a sergeant with the Australian Defence Force, who was part of the 2nd Battalion deployed to Palanai. They were sent to a remote village to enforce a quarantine, but eventually ordered to abandon the village, and ordered to eliminate any surviving villagers, though John refused to issue this order to his men. After leaving the village, John was bitten by an infected, but did not turn. He went to Henderson to check on his family, who had already left, to attempt to flee to Australia. John then went to the Henderson military base, where he was detained and transported to the HMAS Avenger, just prior to the arrival of the Immune survivors from Benoi. The survivors question him on his presence, but they see that he has been bitten, and realize that he is immune just like them. After a brief discussion, the group lose consciousness again, due to the drugs the scientists had given them. The next time they awake, the ship is in jeopardy. Lieutenant Colonel Hardy makes an announcement over the PA system that the ship has been compromised, and he has opened all of the cell doors. The Immune leave the cell, quickly realizing that there has been an outbreak on the ship. To add to the ship's problems, the engines have caught fire, and the Immune have to turn off the gas flow to prevent the engines exploding. The ship is also taking on water, and the Immune have to make their way through the rising water and numerous infected in order to reach the ship's deck. The situation up top is not much better, and the Immune have to fight their way to Hardy. As soon as they reach him, the ship strikes a rock, and Hardy realizes they are on a collision course. A group of infected is also on their way towards them. Once the area is secure, the Immune and Hardy head for the bridge, and have to take out the zombified ship's captain, before Hardy attempts to gain control of the vessel. Unfortunately, it is too late, and the ship crashes. The immune survivors are knocked unconscious, and when they come to, they find themselves lying on the beach of Palanai, with a woman named Harlow telling them the beach isn't safe due to a plague spreading on the island. She directs them to go to the Paradise Survival Camp. The immune make their way to the camp and find it is under attack from the dead. They help defend the camp, and once the dead are disposed of, the immune assists with setting up fences to keep the infected out. After another horde attacks, the immune also blow the bridge into the camp to ensure no more can enter that way. Once the camp is as secure as it can be, Harlow arrives with Lieutenant Colonel Hardy in tow. The immune are not happy to see him, but he tells them that he knows the commanding officer at the military base in Henderson. He tells the group that the base has food, water, weapons, and a way off the island. He also tells them that the island is about to be nuked. The immune agree to head to Henderson, and this means finding a boat. Harlow suggests going to the fishing village of Halai, as they should have some boats there. The immune do go to Halai, but are told that all the boats are gone, though there may still be some at the marina. The marina is overrun with the dead, but sure enough the immune are able to find a boat there that they are able to use once they replace the engine. They then make their way through the jungle by boat to reach the road to Henderson, but unfortunately it has been cut off. Returning to Halai, they are told that a missionary, Marcus Villa, may know another way to reach the city. The immune track down Villa, who, in exchange for the immune finding some equipment for him, tells them that there are Japanese bunkers and tunnels that they will be able to use to get to the highway that leads to Henderson. Villa sends the immune to his house to find a map of the island with an entrance to the tunnels. The immune are prevented from entering the house by a local man who demands the immune find malaria medicine in exchange for being allowed into the house. The immune find some bark that has similar medicinal purposes and are allowed entry. The map they were sent to find turns out to be nothing more than scribbles about the jungle. Returning to Halai, they are told that Villa has gone to the Paradise Survival Camp and is talking about doing a ritual. They find Villa at the camp, yelling for the immune to come forward to be sacrificed as a cure for the plague. Villa sets the camp on fire, and the noise attracts the infected. The immune are forced to defend the camp until Harlow arrives, and they are able to evacuate to Halai. At Halai, the immune and Harlow look over the map, noting that the two entrances to the tunnels are in flooded areas and are inaccessible. John Morgan suggests going to see the scientist Villa worked with, Dr. Kessler. Harlow agrees this is a good idea, and that he will know more about the tunnels. At Dr. Kessler's facility, the scientist tasks the immune with collecting reagents from infected scientists. And once this is done, he convinces the immune to allow him to test their blood as well. He then tells them that the immune's resistance to the virus has not destroyed the virus, but just suppressed it. He warns them that any exposure to mutagens could cause them to lose their immunity, or much worse, and this includes the chemicals that they will find in the Japanese tunnels. Dr. Kessler gives the immune a better map, and they head off to the Santa Maria mission to find one of the entrances to the tunnels. Upon reaching the mission, they find the tunnel is flooded, but they call the rest of the survivors to join them. The other survivors make their way via the marina, but one falls behind. He is bitten by an infected and hides it from the group. The immune find a pump from the marina, and after putting up some defences, switch the pump on to clear the tunnel. The noise again draws the infected, and the immune defend the mission until the water is cleared. The tunnels are filled with the infected and smugglers, and the immune clear the way before calling the rest of the survivors to come through. As the survivors make it out of the tunnel, the one that was bitten, Wayne, says that he was pushed into the chemicals in the tunnel. He mutates into a wrestler, a large and dangerous infected. Harlow admits that she pushed him. She knew he had been infected, and claims she needed to see the impact of the mutagen on someone who had been infected. The immune then have to put Wayne down so the group can reach the ferry terminal. The terminal is occupied by convicts, and while the immune attempt to negotiate with them to gain access to the ferry, this is unsuccessful and the convicts attack. The immune is overcome by fury, caused by the exposure to the chemicals, and after the convicts are eliminated, they contact Dr. Kessler in a panic, trying to find out what is happening to them, but the doctor is of little help, just saying they need to limit their exposure to the mutagen from now on. The immune find a ferry worker who is able to call the ferry, and the immune and the other survivors have to hold off the infected until the ferry arrives. Using the ferry, the group is able to reach Henderson, with the immune first clearing out the surrounding area of the infected, before the ferry worker suggests they head for an old movie theatre. Following this advice, they head into Henderson and make their way to the movie theatre. They clear it of the infected and speak with the owner, who tells them to lower the security shutters to secure the theatre. Once the theatre is secured, the rest of the survivors join the Immune, and Hardy tells them that they will need to go to the military base. Hardy is friends with Commander Briggs and believes that he is the way off the island. The Immune do go to the base, but they find it to be overrun. They make it to the communications room and try to contact Briggs, but instead it is Frank Serpo who answers. Serpo initially refuses to help, but once he recognizes the Immune from the HMAS Avenger, he says he will send them a helicopter. He also tells them that Hardy was lying about the island being nuked. Returning to the theatre, the Immune confront Hardy, who admits he told them that there was a nuke in order to get them to move and get them off the island. He also warns them that Serpo only wants the Immune and isn't coming to get anyone else. Hardy suggests taking the helicopter from Serpo. The group agrees to burn rolls of film on the roof to tell Serpo where they are. The Immune also head to a nearby soundstage to create a diversion. Serpo sees the fire and arrives in the helicopter with soldiers. Following Serpo's orders, the soldiers direct the Immune to board the helicopter first, but Hardy tries to board in order to prevent the helicopter from taking only the Immune. Hardy is then shot by a soldier, and in retaliation, Logan fires a missile at the helicopter, which loses control. The commotion causes the infected to rush the roof, and the Immune have to hold them off. Once the horde has been eliminated, the Immune go to the side of the helicopter crash at the old fort to see if it can be salvaged. Finding the helicopter destroyed, the Immune follow a trail of blood to the pilot, who says Serpo shot the other pilot to distract the infected while he got away. Continuing to search the fort, the Immune finds Serpo, who tells them that Harlow has gone to the quarantine zone and has been stealing data and planning to sell the virus and vaccine to the highest bidder. Serpo also mentions that Harlow was going to take a boat off the island from the quarantine zone. The Immune go into the quarantine zone after Harlow, making their way to the docks. They find Harlow in a lab. She is ranting about the outbreak on Palanite being an experiment to test bioweapons, and how the mutagen will destroy them. She explains that the scientists caught her sneaking into the facility. They tested the mutagen on her, not knowing she was immune, and not knowing that she would kill them all. Harlow believes that the Immune will not be able to control themselves in the end, and that they are all too dangerous to leave the island. Harlow attacks the Immune to try and prevent them from leaving. The Immune fight back and ultimately inject themselves with the mutagen in order to be able to beat her. Once Harlow is dead, the Immune find the boat. Serpo arrives as they are about to leave. He confirms that Palanai was a test for the virus, to see how it mutates and evolves, and whether it can be controlled. Serpo says he knows the Immune took the mutagen, and that if they want any chance of a normal life, they need to go with him for treatment. Instead, the Immune board the boat and leave Serpo behind to become part of his experiment. They pick up the remnants of the Paradise Survival Camp survivors and make for open water. 6 days later, the boat washes up on the coast of a distant island. There is no sign of life on deck, and there are only sounds of gurgling from below. The fate of the Immune and the other survivors is left ambiguous. 6 months after the outbreak on Benoi, Cliff Kalo, along with his friends Linda and Devon, are sailing to the Benoi archipelago to investigate the rumours of a zombie outbreak on Benoi. The radio announcer is heard stating that Benoi is off limits due to unstable harbour conditions. Cliff's father is the media mogul Tom Kalo, and the three believe that if they uncover the truth about the outbreak, then Tom will publish the story worldwide. Cliff stands on the bow of the boat, looking out into the distance. When he is called over by his friends, he expresses that he was having a moment of déjà vu. This will be more meaningful at the end of his story. As the boat approaches the island, Linda wonders why no one is yelling at them to go back, and Devon explains that this is because they are not going to Benoi, they are going to Narapella, the island with the geopharm lab, which Kilo 2 infiltrated at the start of the outbreak. Reaching the beach, Linda moves off to scout some filming locations. After she is gone, Cliff thinks that he hears her say, "so many bodies," but it couldn't have been her. Cliff goes off to find Linda next to a shipping container with the geopharm logo on it, with Linda noting that Cliff was right about geopharm being on Narapella. Cliff takes a few photographs as evidence of geopharm's presence before hearing a horn in the distance and seeing an explosion by the boat, which starts sinking. Cliff runs back down the beach, jumping into the water and swimming to the boat, but as he pulls himself onto the deck, the sail swings around and hits him, knocking him unconscious and throwing him into the sea. He wakes up in a shipping container on Narapella, but Linda and Devon are nowhere to be found. He makes his way towards the marina, but comes across his first zombie. Weaponless for now, Cliff has to sneak around the zombie, finding a rope that allows him to lower himself down to the marina. Entering the marina, Cliff comes across a staff office with phones that ring as he gets close to them. He hears ominous messages over the phones, which we will come back to a bit later. Exiting the building via the garbage chute, Cliff makes his way back to the beach and sees shipping containers falling from the sky, one of which lands directly on top of him. Cliff awakes in a shipping container once more, but this time Linda comes to check on him. Before speaking with Linda, Cliff picks up a makeshift club, which unlocks the achievement Blunt Trauma, and this ties in with one of the theories about what's happening in this story. Linda explains that she fished Cliff out of the water, and it appears Cliff's excursion to the marina was a dream, but he still has the rope he acquired, and the locations he went to in his dream are real and will look the same as when we go back there later in the game. Cliff finds Devon by a deserted shack and uses his club to break the wooden planks barricading the entrance. The back of the hut leads to the jungle, and the trio head off, still chasing their story. They soon come across piles of bodies, and Cliff takes photographs of the scene. The three then make for the mountaintop to survey the situation on the island. Looking out over their surrounds, the trio decide to head for the village to continue their investigations, though Devon would have preferred to go to the marina first to look for another boat. Before they leave the mountaintop, Cliff finds a radio on the picnic table and hears a broadcast from a woman, but she cannot hear him. Heading back down the mountain, the group reaches the piles of bodies again, but this time some of the dead have reanimated, and Cliff is forced to eliminate them. Linda is then attacked by a special zombie, a bouncer, and though Cliff is able to kill it as well, Linda has been bitten and is now infected. As Linda lies on the ground, a plane passes overhead, before crashing not too far away. Cliff tells Devon to take Linda back up the mountain where it is safe while he investigates the crash. At the airfield, Cliff finds the downed plane with Xian Mei within it. He fends off the undead that have been drawn by the noise, and Xian gives him a gun, asking him to hold off the dead while she turns off the alarm. She then tells him that he should leave the island, but Cliff replies that he can't, as Linda has been attacked. Xian tells Cliff that there are research labs on the island, and if there is a cure, that is where it will be. But he won't be able to get in without the master keycard, which is in turn locked in a room opened by 3 keycards that they won't be able to locate unless the power surge in the staff village is resolved. Cliff heads to the staff village, speaking with Linda over the radio on the way and reassuring her that everything will be okay. He is able to resolve the power surge in the village, allowing the keycards to be located. One is in a nearby hangar, one is at the helipad, and one is near Emery's villa. The hangar keycard is easy to obtain, though guarded by a spitter. The one at the villa is guarded by a screamer, who is tough to kill and alerts other infected to any nearby threat. Upon taking the villa keycard, Cliff hallucinates that he is in the geofarm labs. The helipad is also guarded by a tough enemy, a butcher, and upon retrieving this keycard, Cliff again hallucinates, this time that he is in the lab's greenhouse. Returning to the security room with the 3 keycards, Cliff is able to access the room with a master keycard. In this room, Cliff also believes he hears his father making the announcement that Cliff's sister, Alexis, is being made VP of Broadcasting. Cliff's father expresses his admiration for Alexis, who is nothing like Cliff, who prefers to spend his time drinking with friends. Cliff passes out, grabbing his head, and awakes in the room on the mountaintop. He is confronted by Devon, who tells him Linda is missing, and accuses Cliff of chasing a story while Linda was dying. Cliff becomes angry, insisting that he is helping Linda, and that he was talking to her the whole time on the radio. Devon tells Cliff that they don't have a radio. Devon wants to go to the marina to find a way off the island, but Cliff insists on going to the geofarm lab to find a cure for Linda. The two split ways, with Devon heading to the marina, while Cliff heads to the lab. On the way, he imagines seeing a train sticking out of the mountain. Making it to the lab, Cliff uses the keycard to open the door, and is promptly met by a group of zombies, who are shot by Xian. She leaves Cliff a shotgun before entering the lab ahead of him. Cliff makes his way through the lab, coming across what is apparently the body of Kilo 2. Xian then tells Cliff about the data Kilo 2 had stashed, and Cliff goes to find it. When he does, he contacts Linda, proclaiming that this is what they need, and that he is coming to get her. Cliff heads off to look for Linda and the cure, and on the way hallucinates a train coming down the hall towards him. Narrowly avoiding the train, Cliff makes it to Dr. Aaron Wells' lab, where a mutated Dr. Wells and Dr. Faith Kimball stand over Linda. Cliff bursts into the room, shooting Dr. Wells, demanding to know what they have done to Linda. Dr. Wells lunges for Cliff and chases him out through the greenhouse. Cliff flings himself through a window and plummets down to earth towards the mountaintop, waking up again in the mountaintop room. He says to himself that Linda is dead, but Linda replies saying she doesn't think this is a reason for Cliff not to talk to her. Cliff makes his way through the jungle to the marina to find Devon, and is temporarily contacted by Dr. Kimball, though she is cut off, and Cliff questions himself as to whether that conversation really happened. Reaching the marina, Cliff heads to the pier and hallucinates again, fighting his way out to the boat on platforms that rise up in front of him. As he reaches the boat, Cliff again clutches his head and passes out, coming to back on the pier by the partly submerged boat. Cliff decides Devon must still be on the island and is about to go look for him when his father flies overhead in a helicopter, telling Cliff to go to the helipad. Cliff obliges his father and heads across the beach, seeing an infinite number of shipping containers falling from the sky, some of which land on the beach, and Cliff has to make his way through them. Reaching the helipad, Cliff's father tells him to get on as they don't have much time. Cliff tells his dad that he can't leave the island without Devon. Tom then tells him to hand over the data Cliff found, prompting Cliff to realize that his father came to Narapella for the story, not him. Cliff refuses to hand over the data, and Tom and the helicopter fly off. After defeating some zombies that were drawn by the helicopter, Cliff hears Linda's voice again and clutches his head, finding himself on a different looking helipad in the jungle. Venturing forth, Cliff finds a zombified Linda, who he is forced to take out, along with some shadow zombies. Cliff then awakes in the mountaintop room once more, and is relieved it is a dream until he goes outside and finds a memorial to Linda, with Devon's drawings upon it. Cliff is contacted by Cheyenne once more, and she warns him that the island is rigged to blow and he needs to leave now. Cliff is also contacted by Dr. Kimball, who tells him instead to come to the villa and says that she can help him get Devon back if Cliff agrees to help her out as well. Cliff goes to the villa but continues to be plagued with hallucinations. There are more shadow zombies throughout the villa, along with the mutated Dr. Wells, who pursues Cliff until falling through the floor. Cliff makes it to Emery Crown's office, where Dr. Kimball tells him that she finished the serum, and Cliff must take it for everyone's sake. Dr. Kimball then releases an infected Devon, who bites Cliff. Cliff picks up the serum but does not inject himself, before finding himself somewhere else on the island. He sees Devon and Linda in front of him, and makes his way towards them, before being attacked by shadow zombies as they watch. In a recreation of the scene near the start of the game, Linda is attacked and bitten, but this time it is by a zombified Cliff, who the human Cliff has to take down as Linda and Devon disappear. Cliff continues on as the voices urge him to take the serum. He finds himself in a crystalline landscape, continuing to fight through shadow zombies, or being told that it's just a dream, it's a lie, and there is no escape. He sees Cheyenne, who tells him he knows they won't let the secret leave the island, and while Cliff's fate is sealed, he can still help them find a cure. Cliff also sees Devon, who tells Cliff the scientists have them all hooked up to IVs and are dissecting them like lab rats. Devon begs Cliff to wake up and save them. Cliff then sees Dr. Wells, who tells Cliff not to take what Faith is offering, before seeing Dr. Kimball herself, who is talking to someone on the screens, telling them that she has spent years developing the antiviral, and it will at least buy him some time. At the end of the crystal path, Cliff sees the zombified Linda again, and eliminates her once more, before having to fight off wave after wave of zombies, or being confronted by Linda, who tells Cliff he is selfish, Dr. Kimball, who urges Cliff to take the serum, Dr. Wells, who tells Cliff he is in a coma and won't wake up after that blow to his head, and Devon, who suggests Cliff is crazy, and this is all in his head. Defeating the last of the zombies, Cliff kneels down next to Devon's body and the serum, seeming to finally inject himself with the serum, though this is left ambiguous. Cliff is then on the beach with the container containing the data and all of the information he has gathered, while behind him the villa explodes. Cliff takes the container to the edge of the water and records a message to whoever may find it, confirming that the outbreak on Benoi was caused by Geopharm's experiments on Narapella. Cliff pushes the container out to sea before hearing Linda's voice calling to him, and he is seen walking back towards it. The container floats out to sea before being struck by a boat, taking Cliff, Linda, and Devon to Narapella. Cliff stands in the bow of the boat, looking out into the distance. When he is called over by his friends, he expresses that he was having a moment of deja vu. Everything is just as it was at the start of the game, only Cliff's clothes are already torn, and he is already injured, though he seems not to notice. There is also now a katana below deck. Cliff is now free to recommence his adventure on Narapella with minor changes. This time, after being knocked unconscious by the boat, Cliff awakes in his room and goes outside to follow a mysterious figure before being attacked from behind and bitten by a zombie. He then wakes up again in the same shipping container as the first playthrough. The phones in the staff office now tell Cliff that he is dreaming and he needs to wake up, with one voice instead calling for more sedative as he is waking up. At some point during Cliff's adventure on Narapella, he entered Ronald Crown's underwater lab facility. This facility is part of the Underwater Labs DLC, and it can be entered at almost any point during the game. It is here that Cliff can uncover the history of Geofarm, Ronald Crown and Chase Barrister's involvement in the development of HKEA, and the eventual overthrow of Ronald by his son Emery on behalf of the Palm Garden Order. Here Cliff is also confronted by the most dangerous zombie on Narapella, the Dweller. He is almost entirely blind but has exceptional hearing, and is both incredibly difficult to kill in a direct fight and difficult to sneak up on. Cliff continues his hallucinations here, imagining first that water is flooding in, and later that the cable car he rides in drops to the bottom of the sea. After exploring the lab, Cliff is able to leave it by activating the evacuation protocol and going through the most challenging battle he will face on Narapella, as he is swarmed by all types of zombies other than the Dweller, and has to hold them off until the water level rises high enough to electrocute all of the remaining zombies. Given Cliff's frequent hallucinations and the comments made by other characters in the game, along with the apparent time loop Cliff is trapped in, it appears that Cliff most likely was knocked unconscious by the boat and has been in a coma since then. It is also likely that he, Devon and Linda have found themselves being experimented on by Geofarm. A Geofarm file also notes that a patient with the initials CC was brought in with extreme dehydration and is semi-conscious but suffering a serious concussion caused by some kind of blunt force trauma. This means that most of what Cliff saw may not be canon to the story of Dead Island. But Kilo 2's experience in the prologue is not impacted by Cliff being unreliable, so it's likely that parts of the story that Kilo 2 uncovered are real, with Geofarm and the Palm Garden Order being the source of the outbreak, along with Karen's involvement and the consortium. At some point following Dead Island Riptide, Max is living in California with his cat, Rick Furry. Max falls asleep playing a zombie video game, and he dreams that Rick Furry has been catnapped. He fights his way through zombies, criminals, and soldiers to retrieve his cat. He then awakes in his home to find that Rick Furry is sleeping safe and sound next to him. However, their home is surrounded by a zombie horde, which is getting closer. Following the events of Dead Island, the lifeguard, John Cinemoy, was able to escape Benoit prior to the nuclear bombing. He made it to another island in the archipelago, called Amaya. Unfortunately, the disease had found its way to this island as well. Cinemoy comes across another group of survivors who are infected with the disease, but are not turned into mindless zombies. Instead, the disease turns them into superhumans, both stronger and smarter than before, and Cinemoy chooses to stay with these survivors. These events take place during the multiplayer online battle arena game, Dead Island Epidemic. It was cancelled in October of 2015, with the servers being shut down. Dead Island Survivors is another cancelled installment in the series. It was a tower defense mobile game following Dead Island Riptide, in which Xian Mei and Sam B travel between islands assisting other survivors. It was shut down in 2020. And that's a wrap on the Dead Island franchise so far. Let me know what you're hoping for from Dead Island 2. Personally, I'm hoping to hear more about the Palm Garden Order and the Consortium. I will be putting out an updated version of this video once Dead Island 2 is released. So thanks for watching, and I will see you then.